Hi, and welcome to Connecting the Dots, the podcast where we share our stories from the battlefield of consulting. Thank you for tuning in for our annual Christmas episode. I'm your host, Johnny Ho 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 Hill.
And I'm Pamela Crimson Crozier.
Hey, I'm Carolyn Kareem Jamal.
I'm Phil Gift Wrap Gambling.
And I'm Thomas Yuletide Yarnall.
So, a lot has happened in the last year. Turns out the Grinch was in fact not who he claimed to be, and we were definitely right in not working with him. But now, in a turn of events that can really only be explained by the magic of Christmas, the Grinch has changed his ways and is now actually partnering with Santa to work on some new features and ideas inspired by his unique skill set. And Santa has asked us to help figure out what's possible with our current team and resources. There's a lot to unwrap here, so let's get started. Well, that was not what I expected. I mean, I knew Christmas was a magical time of year and all, but I was not expecting the Grinch to A, come clean about his original motives, and B, end up becoming a full-blown business partner with Santa. That's a lot. Yeah, color me surprised.
Yeah, I was cautiously optimistic, but now after seeing his heart grow that quickly, I am very organically optimistic.
Yeah, it's like it grew three sizes almost.
That's impressive.
Right?
Well, what's cool to me is that he kind of admitted, yeah, I was being sneaky. There's this whole like other side of him he wasn't showing us in that meeting, but that's become an asset for Santa now. He's not only kind of learned from that, but there's a whole audience of kids who are kind of into that more Grinchy side of things.
Or maybe they just don't celebrate Christmas. Or they celebrate it, but they don't want to show that they like Santa. So he's tapping into that
Right.
market. I mean, I
It's
think
this,
that's
yeah, it's a
that's
whole
perfect for the Grinch.
untapped market. So one thing that was interesting was that, the Grinch mentioned part of what led to his heart changing was us actually saying no. And he went out and found all these other bidders that were like, oh yeah, yeah, we can do that super cheap. Got his hopes up. Didn't work out too well though, did it? It sounds like kind of crashed and burned day of, and he missed out on a lot of the Grinching he was hoping to get done, right?
Like now that he's partnered with the Grinch, do you think he trusts the Grinch? Or do you think the Grinch might still be a little bit nefarious?
I would not trust him if he hadn't been so upfront with like, hey, here's everything that I made. Can we use any of this? I actually want to really help. Like he was backing up what he said with action and with like showing all the code. Granted, the code was in awful shape because he worked with low bidders, but it sounds like they were able to make something out of it.
Right. So now what does that mean for us since his code wasn't that great and he showed it? But is there any piece that he wants to port over?
I think the elves have been working with him a little bit. Like they've been able to clean some up because remember we had a huge like knowledge transfer and like helping get their elves set up as, the primary developers on the Santa List app. So they kind of know what they're doing and they've been able to sprinkle some Christmas magic on it and get it up and running. So now they have like this whole other thing that they can slot in for identifying kids who, yeah, maybe they're being naughty, but maybe they're actually good kids and they just kind of enjoy coal for some reason.
Yeah, the framework is there for identifying kids on some kind of filter. We just need to update the logic for this. What defines a Grinchy kid versus what we had
Hmm.
before, a good kid?
Well, and yeah, there's a difference between a Grinchy kid as a kid who enjoys it and a Grinchy kid as in
Right.
a brat. So,
Yeah, there's no doubting the Grinch's skill set. Like that part of the algorithm, he has down pretty well. Because he represents that himself. So I think there's definitely value in leveraging that core piece there.
but it sounded like Santa could still use some help from us, getting things moving quickly, especially with Christmas right around the corner.
We'll get
Don't
it
don't
done.
underestimate the power of our accelerators, right? We have this FDC3 layer underneath for the interop, which for Santa we've actually codenamed Christmas tree because it rhymes with FDC3. But we have this Christmas tree layer underneath all of this that just makes everything just magically work.
Well, and having Christmas magic helps with that too. Up until now, we focused primarily on the experience for Santa using the app and for parents reporting things. But, with the Grinch bringing in more of the kind of systems for detection, that kind of opens up a whole new layer of how can we optimize things, how we're processing everything. Santa's mentioned in the past wanting to improve supply chain, inventory management, all that kind of stuff. So that's all on the table. That came up in the conversation we're having with them. I'm hesitant to commit to too much, but I feel like there's a lot we could do there. So maybe it could even be as simple as we come back with, hey, here are the 5 things we know we could do, and just prioritizing and saying, what's most important to you and your team?
How much of his team is going to be sort of taking over some of the responsibility to help sort of Santa scale? Do we need to design a solution where they're equally all going in, or is Santa still the last sort of human in the loop, right? That
Mrs.
is the
Claus
one
has
that sort of
final
marks it.
approval. She's the head honcho overall.
Of
But yeah,
course,
he has a
like
whole
real life.
team of elves working through things. So yeah, we need to factor that in.
Are all of the elves co-located, or do they work in different time zones?
It's really tricky because when you're at the top of the world, the time zones kind of fan out from there. So yeah, that's been a tricky
Yeah, I
thing to
mean it's
figure out.
really all time zones at once.
Yeah, all in then at the same time, I guess.
I
Although
mean
time
they
isn't
go
as
over from the workshop and it's like UTC, and they go over to the barn with the reindeer, and they're on like Asia time.
right.
Yeah, I mean it's a struggle.
I mean,
And
if they're
then
late
yeah.
for a meeting, they just walk the other way and then they're early for that meeting.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
I mean, it's a long week for them.
Well, the elves are working all year round. Santa's kind of taking time off. I think he usually gives them
Kind
a
of.
list of to-dos when he goes to the beach after Christmas is over. But I know he's had interest from other interested parties who, unlike the Grinch, don't want to rip off what he's doing, but are wondering if they can license things. Like I believe the Easter Bunny was interested. The Three Kings, they're still technically partners, but they kind of want to spin off a little bit more and maybe do a little bit more of their own thing. So there's a growing pool of interested parties who want to see if they can kind of leverage some of what Santa's doing.
Take the Santa screener like more global, maybe more deployable on their
Mhm.
own sites, white label behind
Configurable.
their
Yeah.
branding
Yeah, because they're all
So,
slightly
and
different use cases too. So we need to be able to
their own
configure.
criteria.
Yeah.
Right.
so do
And we
we
can
have
configure.
enough for this next version? Do we have enough requirements and use cases that we can actually get going?
I think some of this stuff we can stand up quickly and then have some quick iterations with them because we are very fast at being able to configure it to their needs. So I think once they see it and interact with it, we can probably use that as sort of a driving force to get the true requirements out of them.
Mhm. So that's one of the big things I think we can focus on is, we have a follow-up scheduled with Santa. He's expressed interest in licensing this out to other parties. So I think if we come up with a plan for him for what that could look like and how feasible that is, and especially a timeline that he is
Mhm.
comfortable with, that's going to be key.
So
I mean, if we could focus on our top 3 requirements or our top 3 use cases, or probably 2 at this point,
Mhm.
that would be
Right.
good if we could narrow those down.
Well, the other benefit is some of these other parties aren't interested until the spring or the summer. So we have
Right,
a little
but
bit
we
of
don't want to
room to work
drag.
there. Right.
But
Exactly.
you can it sounds like we better use the workforce throughout the year than this
Mhm.
like spike at the beginning at the end of the year, and then this lull. You can kind of get more efficient use of the elves and support all these other potential clients.
the
And
good
it
good
helps
thing is
spread revenue throughout the year
Mhm.
as you have recurring revenue from selling your data.
It's still not clear how Santa is making money off of his present distribution system, but
Yeah,
yeah,
he's always been
license.
kind of vague about that.
well,
Yeah,
he always I mean he visits every chimney and stuff, but he also visits the reserve at midnight too, right? So he gets some collections from there, I think. If we're having to support all of these different users sort of spread throughout, then I guess maybe it's a good thing, and we need to tout sort of the accessibility and
hmm
language and localization support we have built in out of the box.
hmm
Because not everyone will be speaking English, and not everyone will be just using the web. Maybe they have maybe the Easter Bunny prefers sort of keyboard navigation,
hmm
even a screen reader, because maybe the Easter Bunny is just having a hard time using the keyboard with his large paws and stuff.
Yeah, I think
So
he actually hooks up a Dance Dance Revolution pad to hop around and navigate things. It's pretty impressive.
I mean, you do you, right? If it works, we can support it.
Yeah, not to go down a rabbit hole, but yeah, there'll be accessibility concerns for everyone. So we can't, well, we probably get a reasonable amount.
Oh, for sure. The Three Blind Mice, another potential client we've been chasing for a while, finally managed to carve out some time for us. Towards the tail end of our conversation, they said that accessibility is a must-have feature.
Well, and we've done some localization work already as we moved, working with the Three Kings and having it roll out to more global audiences, and eventually having just kind of translated the online portal for where parents can report things to Santa into most languages. So we have enough to kind of pull from there to, I think, make that an easier process. We should focus more on accessibility though. But something else we need to ask about as we're talking about all this licensing and white labeling is exactly how involved Santa wants to be and how he wants to, how much does he want to know how his customers are using his software? For example, is he wanting to partner more with the Tooth Fairy and see how many of the kids that are on his nice list are on the Tooth Fairy's list and what kind of gifts they're getting so they can kind of coordinate? Or does he want to know, like, is the Easter Bunny giving gifts to naughty kids and does Santa need to take that into account? If does he want to approach it more as a vendor or as a partner? So we probably need to get some clarity on exactly how Santa is wanting to approach all the licensing stuff, how much involvement or collaboration he wants between him and Tooth Fairy, Easter Bunny, Thanksgiving Turkey, all of them, or if he's wanting it to be more hands off and he just provides the basic service and then kind of lets them run with it from there.
It also depends on what sort of master services agreement he has with them on collecting the
Hmm.
PII from them, right? So,
And
Right.
budgets.
and budgets, exactly, right? So there's a lot of data going back and forth there as well between each of those. I think the Three Kings, between them three, can manage a lot of it, so they didn't want to let Santa see it. But there might be others that want to have Santa engage a little more, and it's okay there.
Well, and sometimes you have to be cautious of especially sensitive information. I mean, when talking to Uncle Sam, like that's usually a pretty sensitive environment that you have to be deployed into.
And these are, younger kids, so
They're
like
kids.
it's
Mhm.
even more sensitive to
Right.
them.
Yeah, privacy has been something that we've tried to have built in from the beginning, but there's always going to be new threats that pop up or ways that we could make sure things are staying kind of above board there. So I'd be interested in hearing as we have follow-up conversations with new customers if they are going to have insight into other security concerns that maybe Santa hasn't had to worry about or hasn't come across yet just because of how we're doing things here, but it'll be different once it's, set up with the Easter Bunny or with the Thanksgiving turkey. Kareem, did you catch that? It sounded like a lot of these use cases, it's almost like screening for good or bad, like naughty or nice.
That's right. Yeah, it's definitely a screener problem. I agree. And very quickly being able to filter or select some set up some smart views to
Hmm.
be able to define like what kids or parts of the universe you're targeting, right? So are these the naughty list? Are these the nice list? Are these the just acting naughty list? There's different
Hmm.
types of criteria that will really help him figure out who to give what to. And
Hmm.
as you screen each of these, we're collecting that information from sort of past iterations, right? The analytics we're collecting that we can present up in sort of dialogues or detailed panels where he can really use that, or the elves can then use that to figure out which toy to assign to this person.
Hmm.
If they want reports, they can do reports as well. But I think this will really help and speed it up if he's able to break down and classify these people based on the different toy criteria.
Right. Especially factoring in previous year's performance, previous year gifts given,
Hmm.
yeah, ranking, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that would really help with optimizing things, like Santa's supply chain. If he's leveraging tools like our screener, bringing in historical data, analytics, things like that, and able to kind of quickly find the perfect match for kids all in one view, matching up toys with kids, that'll take out a lot of the guesswork that he's currently doing, especially when it comes to things like how many toys does he even need to make and matching those up with the right kids so he's not running low on inventory, all that kind of stuff. So I think if we can get all of his data in line and get that in, that'll be a really quick win because once everything's in, it's pretty quick to configure and getting it up and going for Santa. And I think that would really help to smooth things out for him, especially on the toy production side of things. kind of
But as
streamline.
far as handling the load, I mean, he did build that whole data center in the North Pole because it was naturally able to keep all of his computers
Mhm.
cold.
And he's
So
using geothermal
he's
energy, I think, for
yeah,
that, right? So,
he's got a quite a powerful infrastructure behind all this. So that surprisingly, I think in this case we haven't run into a lot of back end performance issues because we just throw more Christmas magic resources at it.
It does sound like there's an opportunity for more of an admin portal, though, to be able to surface all of the information and be able to manage those workflows easily.
mhm. Yeah, that's fair because that's been an oversight up until now, or maybe not oversight, but
Well, it's
more
been
just
very Santa
less of a
centric,
priority. Yeah.
and now we're talking about very different workflows. So it probably needs to be something that it doesn't need to be programmed. An elf or one of the other helpers can just jump in and configure the Easter Bunny's
Hmm.
screener quickly.
Right.
Well, and to be able to pull all of the information from all of his different systems into one place so that you can easily access it and others can come in and assist him. Santa's helpers can have accounts as well so that they don't need to pull up 20 different applications and 20 different spreadsheets. They can all just come to one location to get the information they need.
And we have to be aware that using more AI is gonna use up a lot more data center power. They may start heating up and melting more glaciers or something. So we have to be sort of cognizant of that and see how we can help them offload some of that or spread it out, so the North Pole doesn't go all warm.
Right. He doesn't want an over reliance on AI either. He still wants to keep that personal aspect of it, even if it's something that kids would never see. Or Santa's a traditional guy. He wants to be as involved as he can be, but he also is aware there are some things it's just too much for just him to do.
Yeah, I mean, he has all those, he likes the personal touch. That's why he deploys all those agents to malls all over the world during the
Right.
holiday season to
Yeah.
represent him. Because even though he can't be there all the time, he wants everyone to come away with that. And yeah, it's something you just don't get from an AI
Yeah. Hmm.
impersonation of him.
Yeah, that's definitely something that only Santa himself can bring to the table. I think that's why it's also really interesting that the Grinch is partnering with Santa because, I mean, he sees things from such a completely different perspective than Santa does. I mean, he's even mentioned that he had this very specific skill set, and as a result of that, he noticed that we sort of have a gap right now, and that could probably lead to problems down the road or potentially even fraudulent activity. He's worried that there might be some issues where kids might be able to get into their parents' accounts or create their own account under their parents' name if their parents haven't created one yet. Report things like, "Oh yeah, this kid is totally great and he's doing awesome and what deserves all these gifts," when really the kid is, being very naughty. But also he said there's an ability where kids might even be able to report that they have siblings that don't exist, that then they get gifts too. And then Christmas morning they'll take those gifts for their pretend relatives, and it's kind of a lot of fraudulent activity
Yeah,
that the Grinch is
it did
concerned
seem
about that
like
might be slipping through.
it did seem like last year the number of identical twins that appeared on his list skyrocketed.
Yeah, it might be that kids are getting wise to how all this is working and are figuring out how to game the system a little bit. So there's work to be done there for sure.
I mean, I think from a timing standpoint, since we already have some solutions around fraud, it might be something that easily slides in.
I wonder if there are fraud rings of kids faking their
Probably.
gift preferences. That one
Hmm.
kid's doing it, maybe his friends all he spreads the word, and there's a whole network of kids that maybe Santa wants to be able to investigate and look into because probably not just isolated cases.
Yeah, once one kid figures it out and tells all his classmates, then who knows? We might, if we're able to kind of detect, who's involved with these gift fraud rings, how deep this goes. Santa might end up having some pretty major revisions he needs to make to his list and realizing how many naughty kids are actually out there. But he might also save a lot on the cost of producing gifts that were, for, as Phil was saying, identical twins that don't exist or other things like that. So yeah, I'm interested to see just how deep this goes.
I just wonder if it's something maybe that we put off for next year because there'll be resources around having investigators spend time in looking for that
Hmm.
fraud. I mean, I know that what we have is an easier solution, but we need to have them prioritize if the fraud is really that large of an issue this year. Maybe it's something that now that he's working with the Grinch for 1 year, and if next year he's working with the Grinch, and we can focus on that fraud then.
Well, and
Because we
getting
have to
They-
consider the timing and the resources to start
Mhm.
to investigate that fraud.
Well, and how much do we have in place to be able to monitor and actually
Right.
accurately detect that right now? Like, how much work would it need to be? Because the kids are going to be committing the fraud, not the, I mean, there will be some that are, throwing things out there the week before Christmas,
could be
hoping they can make
parents.
it on. That's true. That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, we might need to just add more data points for collecting for now to help us inform
Hmm.
Yeah.
the solution next year. And then maybe we need to talk to the Grinch about, I don't know, retribution on these kids. Like that might be something he's an expert on, punishing.
He has mentioned that before. Yeah, there's both the kids who enjoy the Grinchy side and the kids who, as he put it, deserve the Grinchy side. Santa is not usually that vindictive, but he
I mean,
has
his go-to was just coal for hundreds of years, right?
right.
Maybe the Grinch
Yeah,
can.
but coal's expensive too. I mean, being finance focused, I am, aware and worry for Santa's bottom line too, right? He needs to stay above
And
go
he's going to
broke.
get dinged for the, not so environmentally friendly aspects of distributing coal. So he needs to
Mhm.
pretty quickly be transitioning to something else. So,
Yeah. Like, I mean, some quick things you could do is like see if a kid is asking for a new, briefcase or printer, or I don't know, that the things that are, may signify that the parent is trying to get a free gift for themselves or something. So, doing that sort of cohort gift analysis and stuff.
what are the validation steps we have in place now for making sure that parents are legitimately setting up for their kids? Like that's been pretty loose up until recently because Santa's a pretty trusting guy.
I mean, I think we just had a capture that checked your reading levels above, above high school.
Hmm.
But now kids can thwart that with ChatGPT.
Right. Hmm.
So Santa's going to have to get smarter. We're going to have to figure out how we can help him navigate that kind of problem because that's going to be tricky.
It'll
Because we
need to be
don't.
a fast follow, right? Because I'm seeing
Mhm,
some subreddits coming up as well on like how to take advantage of this.
mhm.
So the word is starting to get out. The numbers, maybe not for this term, but for next term, it's gonna actually skyrocket with the amount of fraud.
Well, and Pam, you make a good point about this isn't the time to probably crack down on this as much because most of the gifts are already made. Santa's already developing most of his flight
Right.
plan. It's pretty late in the game to change things up that dramatically. If we happen to catch a few, significant bad actors, that's fine. But maybe that can be almost more of a proof of concept for Santa. Like, hey, we noticed these trends starting to appear. The Grinch was helpful in kind of offering his expertise on from his previous days how he would have done it. He's kind of acting almost like a reformed hacker in that point where he's now
Yeah,
working for the good guys.
he's like a white hat hacker now.
Yeah, so maybe we can kind of, pitch it to Santa where, hey, we're realizing this a little bit late, but thanks to the Grinch's advice and expertise, we think we can get ahead of this for next year. And then just get a feel from Santa, like, how benevolent are you feeling? Do we really need to crack down on this for next year? Or are you okay with letting there be a certain,
I mean,
percentage of kids that are not deservingly getting gifts?
there's a philosophy that people are inherently good, and maybe
That's
they're
true.
not doing this around Christmas and
Santa does
in the
subscribe to that
holidays,
philosophy.
right?
The Grinch
So
does not.
the
So,
Grinch does not, but we need to weigh the priority in that.
right.
And then, we do have a specific timeline. So maybe he wants to focus on the screeners to allow, the ease of like the visualization of that. So
Yeah,
I
I
don't know.
think I think
I
we
think we
can
talk about the fraud
deprioritize, yeah,
piece, but
make him aware,
yeah.
but we'll focus on the screener and the white labeling above those and the
Yeah,
accessibility localization stuff.
the
Yeah.
fraud's more of
Yep.
a future state, next
Yeah.
phase kind of thing.
Especially once you have more data points and more data from this year to tabulate and determine how much fraud is actually going on.
Well, and Santa had talked about similar to how the kids are using ChatGPT to try to get around Santa stuff. Santa has expressed interest in using more of ChatGPT. We use that a little bit in the most recent updates to help him with like getting, a better starting point for responding to kids' letters because he wants to be more hands-on with that, but the volume is just too much. So he's already open to using ChatGPT and AI tools. Maybe there are some things we can leverage there to also help with identifying fraudulent activity and kind of up level there.
So based on this conversation, when's our follow-up and the complete next steps that we want to share with Santa? Because we need to get those use cases ironed out given
Mhm.
our timing.
We're meeting with him early December before things get too crazy, but when he's still in Christmas mode, so he has,
Mhm.
And that's when the Christmas magic is most readily available because it is still a limited resource. So he wants to be careful not to leverage too much of that in the wrong places.
Yeah, is there a deadline for his procurement office to take a look at the next SOW?
It's always too
Wow.
soon, which is a week, but they work pretty quickly. So if we can get them a draft, we should be good.
Yeah, they're pretty good at turning things around in a night. No
Mhm.
task is too big for those guys.
Okay, so we'll get our proposals together for who has expressed interest in working with Santa already. I think Thanksgiving turkey, Easter bunny, leprechaun from St. Patrick's Day. Is he
Tooth Fairy
distribute
too, right? I
Tooth
thought.
Fairy? Yeah, there were a handful of interested parties, so I think want to get Santa's approval for who he's most interested in working with and make sure there will be some who will be better to maybe partner with, and there will be some that will be better to kind of just license to. So want to get his approval on that, looking into furthering accessibility and language localization. We'll give him the proposal for fraud detection, but knowing we can't really do enough there in the short term. But saying, hey, if we get ahead of this now, we build a few things in, we can get a real good handle on kind of how all that's going, and maybe next year have a really thought out solution to kind of tracking all that down.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's taken a couple of years, but this platform has really sort of picked up, and now the interest in word of mouth is spreading, right? So we talked about the Three Kings, Grinch, Easter Bunny, Leprechauns, Tooth Fairy. They're all chomping at the bit, right? They want a bite of that action. And so this is Santa's time to really scale and leverage that interest. So let's help them do that.
Thanks for connecting with us today. We had a lot of fun putting this episode together and just kind of playing with some of the questions that come up when you're in a more casual setting and talking about what a project may entail. And on that note, if you have a really complex problem that you're currently struggling to solve and would like some help, or you just have thoughts on what we talked about today, or maybe thoughts on what we should talk about next, please feel free to reach out to us at podcast@experoinc.com or on Twitter @experoinc. We'd love to hear from you, and we hope you have a wonderful holiday season. Thanks again for connecting with us.
My big question is, does this mean that Santa is in charge of all of them?
Wait, you mean like since he's licensing out to everyone, it's like Santa's the shadowy figure behind every holiday and everything that gets given out?
Like, is it really Santa is the big man?
He's the big boss behind all of it.
Soon, already he's about to be.
Right?
Thankfully, Santa is incorruptible.
I mean, that's the Christmas mob thing.
Oh man, next year can we just do a mob theme?
Crimson Claus, Coal Kingpin, the Christmas
Ooh,
Crusher,
Kingpin. That's the mob theme.
and Cider
Yeah.
Dawn, Chimney Sneak Charlie, Cookie Cutter Carl,
Wow.
Crinkle Capper.
Wait, Pam, are you asking ChatGPT for mob themed Christmas names?
That was me. I'm the Crinkle Capper. Christmas Carol Collector.
Jeez.
The Christmas Cartel.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, I will stop.